I mean, this is the same Rio Ferdinand that said Ollie's got the will, so I'm not sure how much credence you should attach to what he says. Welcome to this week's edition of One-2-One with Simon Jordan. Don't forget to keep liking and subscribing, and equally as important, leaving your questions in the comment section below. But let's get to this week's show. Look, I mean, VAR isn't getting worse because it's not possible for it to get worse. The implementation of it and the adaptation of it and the utilisation of it might not be improving as we would like it to. I still feel that we've got it the wrong way round. I think that there's this idea that somehow the tech has got to drive the referee rather than the referee driving the tech. The reasons why VAR was brought in was because there's so much scrutiny on referees. There's so much pressure being brought on referees because with the evolution of the modern day broadcaster and their ability to scrutinise and have a 360 degree, 7 day a week, 24-hour scrutiny of every single decision, it put a pressure on referees. So the tech was brought in to make sure that the referees had some support. And really and truly what should be happening is the referee should be calling for VAR when they think they need it, and if they don't call for it, and they should have called for it, then referees being assessed that they're not using the tools that are available to them. So no, I don't think VAR is getting worse. I think that there is so many people that are thinking about what VAR should do, what it could do, what it would do, and not enough people thinking what it can do and how it should be adapted to meet the circumstances. So I still think VAR is the right thing. I just think we've got to establish the protocol better, and referees on a pitch, if they've got any doubt in their mind, should be calling for VAR, should be going over to monitors, and should be driving the tech and not the other way around. It shouldn't be about clear and obvious mistakes. It should be about referees trusting their own judgment. If they feel there's a question there, they should be asking for the tech rather than the tech driving them. Look, it's for Gareth Southgate to decide who he picks and who he doesn't pick. Harry Maguire has never been on my list of top defenders. I think at 80 million quid, I think Leicester must have been laughing all the way to the bank and sent him around in a cab. He's a decent centre-back, but he isn't anywhere near the level of centre-backs that have gone in the past. If you look at him and you look at people like Rio Ferdinand, Nemanja Vidic, and you look at people like John Terry, and you think that Harry Maguire's in the same breath, then there's something wrong with your eyesight, because he's not. He is sort of the living embodiment of the new Manchester United. We spend a lot of money on players that aren't good enough to play for Man United and take us back to the levels where we once were before. I'm sure he's a decent lad. I'm sure that he gives his best, but we're talking about the players that are capable of pushing Man United to the next level. He's not let Southgate down. So Southgate, being Southgate, will want to look at two things: current form, because that's what he says he picks on to some extent, and also the relationships previously and how he's played for England in the past. I wouldn't pick him. I'm not the England manager. I wouldn't put him in Man United's side because I don't think he's good enough. And if you look at Virgil van Dijk as a central defender and you look at Harry Maguire, if you think they're in the same breath, then you're unwell. So from that standpoint, I suppose my answer is I wouldn't pick him for England, no, if I was England manager. The first three Manchester United players, insofar as I'm heavily invested in Man United, they're a topic that comes up so much because it's such a media-centric football club. So with the best will in the world, I think they'd get rid of themselves. I think Lingard, I think Pogba, and I'm not a great, and people are going to say, are you outside of your mind? I'm not a great admirer of Bruno Fernandes. I think he's a very talented player, but I think he's gotten away with murder in the last 6 months. So I could actually go through a list of United players. I could look at Aaron Wan-Bissaka and say, great Aaron, but you've not developed at United, and great, you came from my old club and Palace got a lot of money from it. I could go after Maguire, as I've just done in the previous question, and say he's not good enough to be at Manchester United. I could look at Fred and say Fred's not good enough. I could look at Rashford and say he's not lifting a leg. I could look at Jadon Sancho and say, well, about time he's come into some form, but it ain't that great. I could look at a whole list of players and say this isn't good enough. I think it's an interesting analogy from Michael Owen and Rio Ferdinand to suggest that PSG is unmanageable. I mean, this is the same Rio Ferdinand that said Ollie's got the will, so I'm not sure how much credence you should attach to what he says. No, I think that's a stupid argument. I don't think they're unmanageable at all. I think it takes an effective sort of management, and just because they've gotten knocked out of the Champions League, and just because they've got Mbappe going one way, Messi going the other, and whoever else they've got in the mix, and it's not producing outcomes, doesn't make them unmanageable. I'm incredibly reticent about the notion that Pochettino should be a shoo-in for Man United to get them back to the levels of overtaking Guardiola and Klopp. And I think if you have effective management in PSG, you can manage whomsoever you want. It wasn't difficult to manage Barcelona with Messi when they were winning everything. It's about the quality of the team. You put these players in the team. You wanted them there. You're the manager. You didn't have to have them. Maybe some people would say that's silly, Simon. PSG signed Messi because it was a bigger picture than football. Okay, if you want to manage in that environment, it's up to you. But notwithstanding that, your job was to win the French league, which you will probably do because it's not much of a league. And are they unmanageable there? No, because they'll win the league that they're in. So we're talking about, are they unmanageable when it comes up against sides that are better than PSG? PSG are a manufactured club. They're not a real club. They're a club held together by Middle Eastern money. So with the best will in the world, I know that they've done well previously, and it isn't just about the new ownership. But the French league is nowhere near as competitive as the other leagues. So subsequently, it's not surprising, irrespective of whether they put the world's best players, who are at certain stages of their career, by the way, into that mix, because they're all superstars, a bit like the Harlem Globetrotters, and expect to win a team, to build a team, that wins in Europe. I think the analogy and the example isn't the right comparison. There are better sides than PSG, with better managers than Pochettino. You put the best manager into PSG, and I think you'll get better outcomes than the current observation that because they've got a few superstars in there, they're unmanageable, and I don't think that's right. Anthony Joshua fighting Deontay Wilder. I mean, I don't know. I mean, what's the benefit of that? I mean, Wilder is a busted flush. He's done. He's been done 3 times now by Tyson Fury. He was beaten in the first fight. He was demolished in the second and pretty much cleared out in the third. Joshua's got lucky. Usyk, well, let me phrase my terminology, because there's nothing lucky about Usyk having to go to Ukraine to fight in that conflict. But as far as a boxing scenario, he no longer has the question of having to fight Usyk and the challenges that brings. Wilder now is a diminished force. So I think it's possibly the right time for Anthony Joshua, if he was ever going to fight Wilder, fight him now when he's been bashed up by Tyson Fury and hasn't got much left. So on paper, it looks like a phenomenal fight because of the way that it'll be sold. Wilder's uncompromising power, the hardest hitting heavyweight. But behind that is a slightly broken, diminished fighter. Joshua, obviously having been taken to school by Usyk, it's a sellable fight. It's not a great fight for me. I don't think it tells us anything. If Joshua comes through that fight, which I expect him to do so, what does it tell us? It tells us that he can come through against a fighter that was beaten 3 times by Tyson Fury. Does that tell you anything about Anthony Joshua? Not sure it does. But if it's a fight that keeps Anthony active, then I suppose they've got to make fights like this. I mean, what's the alternative? They start fighting him against the 173-year-old Ortiz. You know, those are the sort of fights that we're being told that they're potentially going to make. They're going to put them in against Joe Joyce. Anthony is at levels above that. I would have liked to have seen him gone and fight Usyk. I'd like to see him fight Fury, because I think those are the legitimate fights for him to have. And Wilder is a name, but I think it will be a fight that Anthony Joshua can win quite comfortably. So it's not one that really inspires me. Right, that's it for this week's edition of One-to-One with Simon Jordan. Don't forget to leave me your thoughts on VAR, PSG, and of course Chelsea. Keep liking and subscribing, and don't forget to leave your questions in the comment sections below. And I'll look forward to seeing you next week.